April 1978, Dublin's most successful pirate radio station had suddenly and dramatically been brought to its knees when its captain, Eamon Cooke, was accused of child abuse.
My reputation as such certainly has been rubbed into the ground and made mud up, but that is of minor consequence. The most important thing is that this radio station as such survives.
Denying all the allegations live on Radio Dublin, Eamon Cooke totally twisted the truth.
They have brought the whole radio movement of Ireland into disrepute. The only ones who will gain from this are, of course, the Department of Post and Telegraphs and RTE.
By the time Cooke took to the airwaves with his diatribe, Siobhan's family already knew the truth because the local priest had heard her recorded testimony of Cooke's abuse.
The tape had gone to the clergy. There was a priest called Father Jimmy Nolan, and he'd gone to my parents to say that he had suspicions that I might be interfered with down in Radio Dublin by Eamon Cooke. My parents then called me in to ask me questions. I was absolutely terrified. I thought I was in trouble.
Siobhan's mother believed her immediately.
My mum's didn't know what to do, so she brought me to have an examination in a doctor's. Now, they asked me a lot of questions about touching, and I explained everything. My mum collapsed in the surgery. She had to be carried out.
Siobhan's mother wanted to go to the Gardaí, but the doctor advised her not to.
And he said it wouldn't be a good idea for my mum to go to the police. That would be very hard on me, and that none of my friends would play with me, and nobody had talked to the family, and it's a child's word over an adult's word.
All of this happened by the time Cooke took to the airwaves with his now infamous broadcast.
The week was spent then in attempting to disprove or prove the allegations, whichever could be done.
Knowing what I know now, listening back to Cooke actually takes my breath away. The arrogance and denial, all in plain sight.
There was little point in myself going around here and there, particularly say to the local Garda station or the local priest and asking them what they thought of me. I'd probably have said, "Good lad," or "You're a great lad," and goodbye.
11-year-old Siobhan and her mother both listened in to Cooke.
At the time I heard the broadcast, but I was supposed to be out playing, but I was sitting on the stairs listening. And my mum and my auntie was in the room listening to the radio broadcast, and they were absolutely devastated. Absolutely devastated.
It wasn't just Siobhan and Anne who'd been abused by Cooke. So had many of their friends.
And his house, you have to remember, overlooked the local school. His bedroom window was filled with children. Day in, day out, he had his eye on that school. And many of my friends within that school, boys and girls.
I'm Peter Mulryan. From RTE Documentary on One, this is Pirate Predator. And a warning before we begin. This series contains references to child sex abuse. Episode 4, Secrets and Lies.
I always wanted to be anonymous because my parents weren't aware of anything that happened.
We're calling this woman Mary and have altered her voice using AI. She was one of the group that was in the garage with Siobhan and Anne, and she has never spoken before.
I remember so much that's like the other girls, but it was one particular experience of going into his house in my communion dress and being abused in my communion dress. He gave me money at the time, I remember. I think it could have been 30 pence or 40 pence, and I remember vividly putting it in my white communion sock.
And now Mary and the other children were sitting by the railway line in Inchicore with Anne, and they were filled with fear.
And it was now in the public arena. We didn't know if we were going to be sent to a home and lose our families and our parents. So there was a group of us sitting on the steps. We were planning on running away because we were so frightened. And we felt it was us who were going to be into trouble. So we had a plan. We were all going to go home and fetch our bags and our sandwich to survive. And we were thinking we'd run away to Memorial Park and live in the trees there. Even the running away is so childlike, but it was deadly serious for us. We were truly in bits at that point.
Meanwhile, because Cooke was blatantly denying the allegations, DJ James Dillon, the man behind Siobhan's recordings, had to uncover the truth for himself.
I said, the only way I'll know is to go up and talk to Siobhan's parents and see where exactly this is at now. When I went up, her mother said, I don't want to talk to you.
James Dillon came to the house, and my mum, she didn't respond very well to James Dillon. Get away from the house. And I don't know what she said to him, but she was very angry, and he was trying to help. And
almost tried to close the door. And I said, please, we're after pulling down a house of cards, the biggest radio station in Ireland, only because we think your daughter has been abused. She reluctantly said, we believe that she was. So I went back to Cooke and I said to him, Cooke, you're a paedophile and you're going to pay for it one day. And with this, he says, James, I'll see you 6 foot under. And I said, are you threatening me? Are you threatening to kill me? He said, no, James, you're mistaken. I think you worry so much you'll put yourself in an early grave.
After the mutiny at Radio Dublin, James Dillon led a walkout of virtually all the staff to start a new station, The Big D.
The alternative. Only the best music. The Big D.
But Eamon Cooke and Radio Dublin were not finished.
There was questions about him being a very threatening individual. Now, he wasn't to me.
That's Dave Moore, one of the disc jockeys that jumped ship with James Dillon.
But I think he could be, he was a feared man, he could be very, very nice, but at the background he was quite a strategic thinking guy,
Dave can recall a Garda regularly visiting Eamon Cooke, a remnant of Cooke's Alpha 7 days when he assisted Gardaí at crime scenes. Though he'd long since stopped his Cape Crusader work, Cooke clearly maintained his Garda connections.
I came in one day and there was this guard sitting in the chair. Big burly guard, the waistcoat off. And I was introduced to a guy called Bimbo. That was his nickname. I have no idea what his name was. And Bimbo was over the communications in Dublin Castle. And he knew him really, really well. But he would communicate to Cooke about various different things.
Bimbo was the nickname of a well-known Garda called Jim Ward. And he even got a shout-out on Radio Dublin on New Year's Eve, 1977.
Many thanks to James Dillon, the captain, Mike Eastwood, and everybody here at Radio Dublin. Not forgetting our very, very good friend Bimbo out there. Thank you to Bimbo for everything in 1977. Okay, back into the party music. And per se rest for all.
Bimbo was the Garda who gave Cooke the nickname Alpha 7. How Cooke became involved with Gardaí only became apparent to us through an anonymous tip we received via our webpage.
Cooke had a radio electrical repair shop on Thomas Street back in the late 60s and into the 70s. I lived close by and would regularly see Garda cars parked outside. Cooke himself had a white MK2 Jaguar, and it would often be parked there at the same time. He used to repair the Garda radio kits, primarily the Kevin Street patrol cars. Mention of friends in high places might well have a connection that began there.
So it looks like Cooke's technical skills fostered his cosy relationship with Gardaí, and his friendship with Bimbo, whose casual and friendly uniformed Garda visits to Radio Dublin provided Cooke with a sense of protection.
And he used to say, if I ever get raided, Bimbo will always help us out and he'd give me the heads up. Whether he did or not, I don't know,
And while there is absolutely no suggestion Bimbo was aware of Cooke's abuse, his mere presence at Radio Dublin gave Cooke an air of official immunity. Back in April 1978, With all 30 of his DJs and staff gone, Cooke scrambled to keep Radio Dublin on air.
Eamon Cooke had put out on the radio that he had been closed down, that all of the DJs had left.
Sean Meany was a local guy who did DJ gigs.
He was asking for anybody who would come in and help to get back on the air. So I popped my double decks and amplifiers into the car and microphones, and off I went.
Knowing nothing about what was actually happening at Radio Dublin, he set off with all his equipment and got the station back on air, and in doing so, got his first big break on radio.
So I spent about 5 hours on the air that afternoon, and then from that I got a regular spot.
It was only later that Sean learnt of the tape containing Siobhan's allegations and that it had been passed to the local priest.
About a week after, the word had got out that the DJs had brought the tape up to the church. Now, that was the local church where Father Michael Cleary was in the parish.
A priest is called to do all sorts of things, So I think an appropriate...
This is the voice of Father Michael Cleary, a priest who, in 1970s Ireland, was a bit of a celebrity.
We ready, boys?
He was known as the singing priest, and he also knew Eamon Cooke. And after the mutiny, Father Cleary got a call from Cooke asking if he'd like to host his very own afternoon show on Radio Dublin.
And lo and behold, about a week later on the Sunday, at the same spot between 1 and 3 o'clock, Father Michael Cleary arrives to do the 2-hour show.
A show on an illegal pirate radio station might not have been the most obvious place for a priest in 1970s Ireland to appear, but Father Cleary knew it was a different way of reaching his flock.
My particular talent lies in talking my head off and cracking a joke and singing a song. Well, this is what God gave me to work with. And I find that in general, it does get me across to that particular section of the community that I aim particularly at, the younger folk and the people of that age group who look for in their priest one who you might say seems to be on their wavelength.
He'd read letters, and he would get a lot of letters. What's a letter, I hear you say?
Philip Cawley later became a DJ, but as a young teenager, he had heard Father Michael Cleary's programme.
He'd play all the Irish favourites, Do You Want Your Old Lobby Washed Down and Conshine. But he was terrible because he would be skipping the records and everything would be all over the place, and he'd have a cigarette in his mouth while he was trying to read a letter, hold the microphone and play a record.
Father Michael Cleary was no ordinary priest. A regular on The Late Late Show and a conservative voice in Irish media, he too was hiding a double life. By the time he hosted his Radio Dublin show, Cleary had fathered 2 children with his housekeeper. While there's no evidence Father Cleary abused children, he was complicit in helping Eamon Cooke cover up his abuse.
He used to praise Eamon Cooke, and he used to have a go at people who used to be saying things about him.
Cooke was strategically setting out to make himself untouchable.
I didn't put 2 and 2 together then, but I can put it together now because now I know that he was causing all these problems with young children.
Eamon Cooke now used his influence over his newest DJ, Father Michael Cleary, and asked him for a favour: to get the tape of Siobhan's allegations back from the local priest. And he duly obliged.
Father Michael Cleary brought the tape back to Eamon Cooke, and that way they buried it. I always got the feeling that because of Holy Ireland that they didn't want all that kind of information to get out.
What Shauna is saying is backed up by retired Detective Sergeant Jerry Kelly, one of the key officers involved in eventually bringing Cooke to justice.
The tape disappeared. They went to the priest. Cooke used Father Cleary to talk to the priest in Inchicore, but it just died a death. Father Cleary, who was big into singing, and he was known as the singing priest. His partner in crime was no less than Father Tony Walsh, a prolific paedophile abuser.
Now this is where our story grows even darker. Father Tony Walsh sang with Father Michael Cleary, who was now the common denominator between Father Walsh and Eamon Cooke. And in 1978, Father Tony Walsh was already a serial abuser. He likely abused hundreds of children. Here was Father Tony Walsh, operating in the exact same orbit as Eamon Cooke, in the exact same localities at the exact same time, both serial abusers of children. Cooke now had a Garda and members of the clergy regularly calling to Radio Dublin.
He had woven everybody in around him. The well-to-do in society, the people who we all looked up to was the clergy at the time, you know. It was a different era than today's world. You know, the helm massive sway. He used all that to make him look good. He kept in with everybody like that.
If Cooke seemed untouchable to the outside world, no one felt that reality more deeply than Siobhan and Cooke's other victims.
So he had Father Michael Cleary, Father Tony Walsh, and that's basically telling all the people out there, don't listen to them, listen to me, look who I have working for me. So how could these accusations, how could there be any purpose to them when I have two of the most upstanding members of the clergy with me? So that was the way he got to us.
With Siobhan's tape now buried forever, Cooke flipped the narrative to play the victim. He fooled the press, including McGill magazine, even as James Dillon and his DJ colleagues continued to protect Siobhan.
Their sole source for this allegation is a 10-year-old girl, whom they are reluctant to identify, even on a confidential basis, to the press. They remain amazingly coy on the happy coincidence of their disillusionment with Mr. Cooke, with the sudden availability...
After the mutiny, Radio Dublin just kept on going and kept on growing. In 1978, it became the first radio station in Ireland to ever use jingles. And later that year, Radio Dublin even launched its very own single, I Like It.
We got the sound you want to listen to, the best around, it's got to be. Hang in to Dublin Radio, tune in 253.
Throughout everything that was going on, Cooke maintained a cutting edge to Radio Dublin.
My goodness, he had to get all over. Right, now then, gonna make you a star, as it happens.
It was during the summer of 1978 that it first appears Jimmy Saville came into Eamon Cooke's life. By then, Saville was already a huge celebrity across the UK and Ireland.
Jimmy Saville was born in Leeds on the 31st of October, 1926.
Since his death in 2012, there have been countless documentaries made about Jimmy Saville. Because as we know, just like Cooke, he was a predator, a serial abuser.
After running several nightclubs across the country, Saville began working as a DJ, first at Radio Luxembourg and then, in 1968, joining the BBC.
On January 1st, 1964, BBC premiered the first episode of Top of the Pops. Jimmy Saville hosted the episode.
In 1975, Saville began presenting the show that would make him a household name. Jim will fix it.
Children would write letters to the show asking if Jim would fix it so they could make their dreams a reality.
Dear Jimmy, I have always wanted to see Rolf Harris doing one of his paintings, and I would like to have a try. Please could you fix it for me? Good luck. Love, Lynn.
Saville chose the weak and vulnerable as his victims, children and those in psychiatric settings.
Whilst witnesses told us that it was an open secret within the hospital, that Saville was a lecher and a general nuisance, none stated that they knew about his sexual abuse activities.
From 1967 through to the early 80s, Jimmy Saville came to Ireland to lead a huge annual charity walk for CRC, the Central Remedial Clinic in Dublin, a national charity that works with children and adults with disabilities.
Jimmy Savile's called it the biggest sponsored walk in the world.
Eamon Andrews, the Health Minister Dr Michael Woods and Dublin's Lord Mayor were there to send the walkers on their way.
About a month after the Radio Dublin mutiny, Jimmy Saville arrived to Ireland for his 1978 walk, raising £100,000, nearly €1 million in today's money.
Evening Herald, May 8th, 1978. They had to borrow a Rolls-Royce yesterday for Jimmy Saville to take him back to his Dublin city centre hotel after he completed his 11th Central Remedial Clinic walk from Midlabbey Street to Baldoyle.
Eamon Cooke rang Jimmy Saville to do an interview, and he was very anxious to do the interview himself. This is it, Cooke was.
It was just ahead of that walk that Cooke first spoke with Jimmy Saville, as DJ Sean Meany remembers.
And he rang him live on the air, and he made it seem like that Saville rang him. But I was amazed because I'd never known Eamon Cooke to interview anybody, but he was very anxious to interview him. Jimmy Saville came to the Radio Dublin at one stage. I wasn't there, but he came to the station the next time. He actually came into the station. So there was definitely some kind of connection there.
And that connection between Eamon Cooke and Jimmy Saville only grew in the following years as Radio Dublin helped out at Saville's CRC charity walk each year.
What would you say? The organisers, the people supplying the music, it was good publicity for us, it was good publicity for the hospital, it was good for Jimmy Saville, it was all good.
I'm in Neil Hayes' kitchen, drinking tea and looking at some old photos. As a teenager, Neil worked at Radio Dublin.
You met Jimmy Saville?
I met Jimmy Saville. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. I think I have pictures of Jimmy Saville now, if we could just go through these photographs.
Neil has half a dozen of these photographs featuring Saville and the Radio Dublin crew.
The man in the golden suit is Jimmy Saville.
That is some suit.
And he was a big crowd puller. Yep. Ladies and gentlemen and all that sort of thing from the rostrum. Everyone.
So you were literally, that's very, very close. You were right up the front.
Well, I met Jimmy Saville.
You said,
because I would have been one of the DJs and one of the people involved in the radio. And here he is. Before we set off, this is Middle Abbey Street.
That's the old Independent building, isn't it?
I think it is.
Newspapers, yeah.
That's Johnny Logan. Johnny Logan had a broken leg at the time. I remember quite clearly taking these photographs that he had a broken leg. There's quite a few of Jimmy Saville.
Yeah.
Since the death of Jimmy Saville, UK police investigations estimate he abused up to 1,000 children and vulnerable adults over 50 years.
I like records, pop music.
He frequently used charity events to access his victims by luring them into his mobile dressing room, a caravan, for autographs.
Did you get his autograph?
I did. And he autographed that exact sticker. I'm tuned to 253 Radio Dublin. He drew a picture of a little smiley face and signed it Jimmy Saville.
A BBC report into Saville's abuse found he used his caravans as the primary site for many of the rapes and serious sexual assaults he committed.
He was in a caravan when we got out to the end of the walk. He was in a caravan signing autographs. And of course we have first opportunity to get autographs because we were part of the Radio Dublin crew.
It's very likely Jimmy Saville abused women and children on his visits to Ireland. And that's not just me saying it. 1 in 4, the sex abuse support group, believes that too.
Given the prolific nature of his abuse, Ms. Lewis said, it is surprising, given he visited here so frequently, that no Irish victims have come forward.
Eamon Cooke visited Jimmy Saville's caravan during his Irish charity walks, and Jimmy Saville visited Eamon Cooke at Radio Dublin. When you put the two predators in the same place at the same time, with access to children, there's every chance they could have operated together. But of course, we don't know if that's true, and we won't know if it's true unless victims come forward.
My name is Gary Deering. I grew up in Inchicore in the flats in Tyrone Place.
While Jimmy Saville's caravan and charity walks gave him a constant point of access to children, Radio Dublin did the very same thing for Eamon Cooke.
Which I try to give you every morning between 7 and 9.
I became involved with the summer project. That was like a big thing during the summer. So Radio Dublin was big at the time in Inchicore. Like, there wasn't much going on, and Radio Dublin was like a focal point for young children, you know.
For 7 and 8-year-old children like Gary, the DJs at Radio Dublin were their rock stars. So his trips to Radio Dublin studios are strong childhood memories.
There'll be a youth leader, maybe 2 youth leaders there. There'll be maybe 5, 10 kids, if I remember right. You walked in the front door of Radio Dublin and you turn right, and it was a heavy steel door, like into the old living room of the house. And then right again there was a desk, and that's where the DJs would have kind of broadcast from.
The Inchicore Summer Project was just one of the many local initiatives that channeled a steady stream of young children into Radio Dublin, into Eamon Cooke's home. Gary was lucky that he never crossed paths with Cooke when he was there, but can see how dangerous the scenario was for children.
Couldn't believe that we were so close to him as children and going there as part of a youth club, you know. But when I read about it years later, it put a shiver up my spine, because you're thinking, you were just, as children, you were like lambs to the slaughter. You were just walking up there.
Anne, who we met earlier in this episode, was not as fortunate as Gary. As 1978 moved into 1979, she was struggling to cope with Eamon Cooke's abuse of her.
At the time, I'm just surviving, and I'm just about to start secondary school. I was informed that we were moving house and that we were moving 2 doors away from Cooke. Our family had grown. They just needed the extra bedrooms. But my parents couldn't understand why I was reacting so badly. They couldn't understand why I was through the roof with rage and fear. So eventually I was taken down to see the house, and I went up to the bedroom that was to be mine, and I looked out the window, and standing in his backyard looking up at me, leaning against his garage door, was Eamon Cooke. And you're pretty powerless at that point. I felt distraught. I felt I couldn't get away from him now at all. It was horrific, actually.
Mary, another victim we also met earlier in this episode. She can clearly remember the one person who appears to have been willing and able to stand up to Eamon Cooke.
Mrs. Richardson was a small woman with grey hair, very petite lady, but she was a very vocal lady, and, you know, you'd be scared of her if she gave out to you if you were playing, you know, near her garden too much to ruin her flowers. She had 2 dogs, as far as I remember. I think they were Cocker Spaniels.
Mrs. Richardson was also Eamon Cooke's next-door neighbour. And she had enough. Enough of the noise, the interference to her TV, the 60-foot radio aerial towering over her garden, and the rumours of child abuse. She decided she would put Radio Dublin off the air.
And then one day we just woke up and Mrs. Richardson had cut down the huge big aerial, and we couldn't believe it.
Evening Herald, Friday, March 9th, 1979. Woman next door silences pirate station. Radio Dublin was put off the air today by one of its elderly neighbours. Mrs. Catherine Richardson of Sarsfield Road in Inchicore said today she had arranged for stay wires on the station's 60-foot aerial, which were on Mrs. Richardson's boundary wall, to be cut, resulting in the aerial falling down across back gardens on Sarsfields Road.
This was the first time someone successfully stood up to Eamon Cooke. And even though she was a child, what Mrs. Richardson did wasn't lost on Mary.
We looked at her with different eyes then, and we were always saying to Pete she couldn't go in and cut something else belonged to Eamon Cooke, but that's the bit. Yeah, we were in awe of Mrs. Richardson. And she just said enough's enough. But absolutely delighted when that happened, because for the first time it showed us that showed me that somebody could be bigger than him.
Throughout 1978 and 79, Eamon Cooke built up an immunity, shielded by those around him. Even on the occasions he was caught, he always found a way to keep his predatory behaviour on course.
You know, he'd be creeping around the house.
DJ Sean Meany again.
I mean, there was one particular day that I mistakenly opened the door upstairs beside the toilet, and he was in there, and he was on top of a young girl, you know. So the girl, as it turned out, I knew that she had been downstairs on the phones, answering the phones.
Eamon Cooke was 42 years old at this time.
She was 15 years of age. He just said, "Get out," And I did, and I didn't open my mouth. I didn't say anything to anybody. I was quite shocked, actually, And 2 or 3 weeks later, I suddenly got dropped from the station, and I can only conclude that that was the reason.
James Dillon and all those who'd left Radio Dublin spent the following months and years wondering, when was Eamon Cooke going to be stopped?
I thought from time to time, how come we didn't hear anything? Maybe quietly in the background he's been arrested or something's happened.
Cooke must have by now felt invincible. His abuse of children was endemic, almost daily it seems, and no one could stop him.
And time just went on and on and on, and yeah.
Join us in episode 5 as Cooke fathers his first child. The mother is an underage girl.
Yeah, I'm just remembering that when they arrived at the house, and obviously I was sort of trying to work out the relationship between an older man and this very young girl, thinking she was his daughter. But I do have a vague memory that she was pregnant at the time and thinking like she looked very young to be carrying a child,
If you know anything about Eamon Cooke, please contact us in confidence at documentaries@rte.ie, or you can leave an anonymous tip on rte.ie/pirate predator. If you've been affected by any issues raised in this episode, please visit rte.ie/helplines. Pirate Predator is narrated by me, Peter Mulryan. The series is produced by myself,
together with me, Nicoline Greer,
and me, Shauna McGreevy,
and me, Liam O'Brien.
The music is composed and performed by me, Alma Kelliher, with Ste Carolan on guitars.
And sound design is by me, Damian Chennells.
Until next time, thanks for listening.